Today in Psalm 15, we're going to think about the different perspectives of a New Testament believer and an Old Testament believer, and on the concepts that the Old Testament believer understands as applied to a New Testament believer. We're going to talk about that today when we talk about integrity. What does that mean? What does it look like? And we'll do that when we come right back. Hi, and welcome to Bible Study with Friends, where our goal is to help you get more impact from your Bible study. I'm here with my friend Jerry Duckett, and Jerry and I hope this is a blessing to you, and if it is, be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and we'd appreciate that. Today we're going to be in Psalm 15, and you might go, gee, that's only 5 verses. Jerry has made that mistake before where he said, this is a short psalm. There won't be very much to study. We're going to see today some points to really spend some time meditating about how this applies and some understanding of Old Testament and New Testament belief. So today we're going to get into that. Are you ready to go, Jerry?
I'm ready.
All right. Now, one of the first questions we ask is, who is the author? And here we see a superscription that this is a Psalm of David. Now, it doesn't give us any other details of when this was written or what was the circumstances it was written. It just is a psalm that originated with David.
Right.
And what's interesting about this is it's a sister psalm to Psalm 14. In Psalm 14, we saw the description of the wicked. The fool says in his heart, there is no God. And 3 times in that psalm, it said, there's no one righteous, not one.
In the world.
In the world.
Yes.
Then Psalm 15 describes how we can live a life that is righteous. So it is a comparison. And another comparison is, do you remember in Psalm 14, we noticed that there was no prayer. It was all a sermon.
Right.
We, the audience, were being addressed directly by David, the author. Here, we see just the opposite. This entire psalm is a prayer.
Is a prayer, right.
And we, as the audience, are not addressed at all. It's all about praying to the Lord, and we get to kind of eavesdrop on that prayer. Okay?
Okay.
Now, one of the other things that we have to consider, and this psalm is going to talk about the righteous and living righteously. And we need to stop and think about something for a minute as New Testament believers, which we are, that there is a fundamental difference between an Old Testament believer's lifestyle and the motivation for that lifestyle, and a New Testament believer's lifestyle and motive for the lifestyle.
Right.
To think about that from the very beginning, that this applies to New Testament believers, but it applies in a different way than it applied to an Old Testament believer. So now, if we think about this psalm is going to be about the works done in life, the righteous works of life. What is the difference between an Old Testament believer's concept of works and a New Testament's concept of works? What's the difference? In the Old Testament, a believer always referred to the law. And under the law, you did works in
Right.
order to please God and earn a place in
heaven.
salvation.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have yet the Messiah who was going to fulfill everything by grace. Now, we as New Testament believers, we want to do good works, but we don't do good works to earn salvation.
That's right.
We do good works because we are already saved.
Because of salvation.
Because of salvation. So in the Old Testament, they're talking about integrity and the actions of the righteous as a way of earning God's blessings. Whereas New Testament, the same concepts will apply to us, but they apply to us in the context of wanting to do good works to show we already are saved.
Right.
Not to earn it. Ephesians 2:8-9 says, by grace you've been saved through faith, not as a result of works. But James says, show me your faith without your works, and I'll show you a dead faith. So we want to do works as a result of faith, not to gain faith. Okay.
Right.
So as we read here, we're going to just keep that in mind as we're reading, as we go through these 5 verses and we get into them. Okay.
That's a point of contention with a lot of different religions.
Oh, yeah. Because there's a lot of people that claim to be Christians, but it's all about works.
Yes.
They try to earn their salvation.
Yes.
And Ephesians 2:8 and 9 makes it very clear. You are not saved by doing good works. You are saved by grace alone, in Christ alone, period. We do good works as Christians,
as a
but
result.
we do them because we're saved, not to earn salvation, okay? And that's a good thing to just have clear in our minds as we're going in.
Definitely. Very
This
definitely.
is an Old Testament believer talking to Old Testament believers, and there's some things we can take to the bank as we study it as New Testament believers. So
Right.
let's get into this. There's a key word here that I want to get into. Let's read verse 1 and talk about it for a second.
O Lord, who may abide in your tent? Who may dwell in your holy hill? On
Okay.
your holy hill.
Now, some things here for us to know. When he says, who may abide in your tent? When we think about David, what was the tent he's talking about? Think back, time of David.
Okay.
Was there a temple when David was alive?
No.
No, he hadn't built it yet. Solomon, his son, is going to build the temple.
Right.
So at this point in David's life, God is experienced with his people in the tent of the tabernacle.
Okay.
So that question is, who may dwell in your tent, is who can fellowship with you in your tabernacle? Okay.
Okay.
And then he says, and who will live on your holy hill? And we go, okay, what is God's holy hill? And what God's holy hill, we can do a lot of cross references. We're not going to stop and look them up, but I did some. Psalm 48, the whole psalm is about God's holy hill, Mount Zion.
Well, that's what I was thinking, Mount Zion.
And that's basically Jerusalem. So who may abide, that is, who can live with you in fellowship in your tent temporarily, and who can dwell on your holy hill, Zion, Jerusalem? And he's talking about the ultimate heavenly Jerusalem that comes down to earth remade as a permanent location. And Psalm 48 talks about his holy hill as a permanent location. Okay. So there's other places you can find. There's all kinds of places that talk about God's holy hill. So the question that David is asking is, what are the qualifications for fellowshipping with God and remaining or dwelling with him in the permanent location of heaven? And I think of John 14:1 that Jesus talked to the disciples. I'm going to prepare a place for you. In my Father's house, there are many mansions. I go to prepare a place for you. And I'm going to come back and take you to myself, that where I am in my Father's mansions in Zion, you may be also. So we're not talking about the political structure of Jerusalem. We're talking about God's structure of the new Jerusalem that is on earth, where he dwells with mankind.
Yeah.
So that's a great question to ask. Basically, David's saying, who is qualified to fellowship with you and dwell with you? Okay. It's an excellent question.
Yes.
We can stop and say, gee, I wonder, as a New Testament believer, what is the qualifications for being a believer and going to heaven and dwelling with Christ and fellowshipping with him? We're going to see very interesting things. Now let's go on. Verse 2 is a key verse, and I love this verse because he answers the question. Okay. And there's 3 verbs in this verse. And I'm going to read the verse, and we got to watch for these 3. I've got them marked here so you can cheat and look at my notes. But so the answer, who can dwell, who can abide with God, and who can dwell with him permanently in his holy hill, the answer is the one who walks with integrity and works righteousness and speaks truth in his heart. Now, the key word in that verse is integrity.
Yes.
It's walks with integrity, works righteousness or right acts, and speaks the truth. So that rounds out the life. It's your actions, your works, okay? Your lifestyle is this idea of walking with the Lord is your lifestyle. Works is what you accomplish, and speaks is what you're saying from the heart. Okay? Now, let's talk about real quick when we read that verse, we stop and go, wait a minute. He who walks with integrity. What is integrity? How would you describe integrity?
Integrity would be your actions and thoughts are in line together. You're acting out your truth.
Okay, so your actions, it's literally that verse. It's your walk, your lifestyle, your actions, and what you say. It's the complete package. The best illustration I saw of this, Jerry, was when I lived in Hawaii. I had a friend who was a submariner,
Uh-huh.
and he talked about before the submarine went under the water. Okay. The
Okay.
captain would say, dive the boat. There was a board that had green lights of all the systems on the boat, the air system and the propellant and the weapons and all of the systems on the boat. And there were these green lights that would light up, and they all had to light up before they went under the water. And there was a guy standing in front of this board, and when all the lights were green, he would say to the captain, Captain, the boat has integrity. And basically what he's saying is all the systems on the boat were ready to go, were active and fully functioning. And I love that because to me, when it talks about integrity, and I ask the question, do you live out your integrity? Are all the systems in your life working correctly as far as God is concerned?
Right.
And you say, I'm doing pretty good with this area, but this area is really bad. It's a red light on the board.
Right. Exactly.
You're not ready to go under the waves of your life yet because your systems don't have integrity. Okay.
Depends on what day of the week you're talking about. So.
Yeah, but it shouldn't. So you ask the question, do I have integrity?
Yes.
Do I have integrity in the way I walk in my lifestyle? Do I have integrity in the way I do things in my life? And do I have integrity in what I say in my life? You could stop there and really do some meditation
Yes.
on your integrity.
Yes.
I remember when Job was hit with these trials and he was suffering, and his wife came to him and said, Job, are you going to stick with your integrity? Why don't you just curse God and die? And Job said, no, I can't. I have to stick with my integrity of how I think about God, how I talk about God, and how I live for God.
Yep.
So that's an interesting verse. We think about this. Look at this again. You stop and read that. Now, integrity, if you look up the definition, it's sincerity of action. It's wholehearted devotion. And it means sound, without fail. And there's some verses you could look up. Psalm 26 is about integrity. And he basically says in verse 1, I want to walk in integrity. In verse 11, I want to walk in integrity. I want to walk in a way that all the systems in my life, so we can stop and ask ourselves that question. Do I qualify as living a life of integrity? Now, he's going to give us examples. So the answer to this question, who could abide in the tent? Who could fellowship with God? All right, the one who walks in integrity and works righteousness and speaks truth. Now, we know as New Testament believers, there's a key phrase there, and you got to believe in Christ. Then, as a result of believing in Christ, you walk with integrity, work with righteousness, and speak the truth in your heart.
Yes.
That makes sense?
Yes.
As a difference between Old Testament and New Testament. Now,
it gets deeper from there.
He then gives examples of one who walks with integrity, works with righteousness, and speaks the truth in his heart. And then he gives these examples starting at verse 3. And let's just go quickly through these. First of all, he does not slander with his tongue. That's gossiping. Slander is always about somebody else. So it's gossiping about somebody else. So if you're walking with integrity, working in righteousness, and speaking the truth in your heart, you don't gossip about other people. So this is an attitude towards your neighbors, and your neighbors being anybody around you. You don't gossip about them. You don't do evil to your neighbor.
Right.
So that's your actions. And you do not take up a reproach against his friend. So you don't even talk bad about your neighbor's friends. So the first thing about living a life of integrity, from this description is, what's your attitude towards your neighbors? So we stop and say, wait a minute here. Do I slander anybody? Am I gossiping about somebody? Am I doing evil towards somebody? Do I take up a reproach against somebody's friend? Do I say, oh, I like him, but his friend is an idiot, kind of thing? And right now in this culture, this is really hard because people are very angry at each other.
Yes.
People say terrible things about each other. Social media is full of nastiness. So if I'm going to live as a believer and I'm going to live a life of integrity, there's an interesting term. The life of integrity is a life that's blameless. That doesn't mean sinless. It means people can't point a finger and blame you for something, because if they did, they would go, oh, no, I know the way he lives. He is a person of integrity. And unfortunately, we don't have that in our lives. There are a lot of people who are not living a life of integrity. And you can tell the way they talk about each other, the way they talk about other people. Now let's go on with these examples.
That could be deceptive too, because even we could be even talking about somebody and refer to them in that way, and we're doing exactly what we're saying they shouldn't do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. I've known people who are terrible gossips, and they gossip about people being gossips.
Exactly.
They go, I'm not talking just about women gossip. I know men that are gossips too.
Oh, yes.
And we need to really, as Christians who are trying to live a life of integrity, we need to really watch the way we speak. Now, if we go on, the next example is the attitude towards the wicked. Now, he doesn't do these things up here in verse 3. In verse 4, in whose eyes a reprobate is despised, but he who honors those who fear the Lord. Now, so this is a contrast here. In whose eyes a reprobate is despised. First thing you got to do is look up a dictionary and look up what the word reprobate means.
Yeah.
Did you happen to do that?
No, I haven't yet.
Okay. It means a notorious evildoer.
Okay.
A reprobate is somebody who is notoriously bad. And the person of integrity does not hang out with people who are reprobates.
Yeah.
We're careful who we fellowship with.
I thought that would be the definition, but I wasn't.
Yeah. And you can stop and look it up in the dictionary and go, reprobate. Do I know any reprobates? Yeah, I know some.
Yeah.
I know guys that really revel in the fact that they're wicked. We talked about that in Psalm 14 last week.
Yes.
And it says, instead of hanging out with reprobates, we honor those who are fellow people of integrity. That in that verse, but we honor those who fear the Lord. Now, if you're a Christian and you go, I really love the Lord and I spend time with the Lord, but I hate going to church because I hate those people.
Right.
That's not honoring people who fear the Lord. We should honor fellow believers who fear the Lord and want to hang out with them. That's all part of living out the life of integrity. That making sense?
Yes.
So it's our attitude towards the wicked, and the opposite of the wicked is those who fear the Lord. The next one is he who honors those who fear the Lord, and he swears to his own hurt and does not change. Now, what do you think that means? The person of integrity swears to his own hurt and does not change. What do you think that means?
That's one I struggled with. It's
when you swear to your own hurt, what would that be? Okay. This idea is, I'm going to speak the truth, even if it hurts. I'm going to swear this is true.
That makes sense. Yes.
And I'm going to swear this is true, even if the truth hurts me. I'm not going to twist the truth in order to benefit me. You see what he's saying? So the one who is living a life of integrity, he may swear about something. He may say something. Remember, this is all talking about speaking the truth in his heart. He speaks the truth. He swears the truth, even if it hurts him, and he does not change the truth. So he's not in there saying, I'm going to twist the truth for my benefit. He said, no, the truth is the truth, even if it hurts me. That's integrity.
Yes, big time.
So we stop and say, are there things in my life that I need to speak about that are true, that I don't need to twist, that I don't need to worry about hurting me? I need to say the truth, whether it hurts or not. That is living the life and speaking the life of integrity.
Yes.
My word is my bond. I'm going to speak the truth, even if it hurts. Then in verse 5, there's an interesting phrase in here. He does not put out his money at interest. Okay? Now, there's a number of verses that talk about this. We don't turn there, but in Exodus 22:25, it says that you don't loan your money to a fellow Jew and charge him interest.
Exactly. That's the way I've read that.
If he needs money, you give him money and have him repay you, but you don't charge interest. So when it says put out his money, he, the person of integrity, does not put out his money, that he does not loan his money at interest.
At interest. I had to read that one several times, and that's what I came up with.
Yeah. So that, and how that would relate to us would be, if somebody has a need, I'm going to help fill that need, not based upon whether he can pay me back plus or
Right.
not. I'm not going to worry about, I'm going to help this person. Am I going to get extra for it?
Return in kind.
Yeah. No, I'm just going to meet needs. And he says, nor does he take a bribe against the innocent. His word can't be brought off. And this is this one up here where he swears to his own hurt. And he does not take a bribe to change the truth so that the innocent are damaged. And then it says, he who does these things will never be shaken. Now, if you look at 2 Peter, we're not going to turn there, but 2 Peter chapter 1, from verse 5 to verse 10, talks about actions as a New Testament believer, that we bring integrity, we bring right actions, we bring faith, we bring endurance, we bring a number of things. And when we do those things, the verse 10 says that we will abide with God and not be shaken. He will be a shield to us. And 1 John 2:17 talks about that same thing, that we will not be shaken if we as New Testament believers have integrity and do these things, not to earn salvation, but because we are already saved, we will be secure. We will not be shaken.
Yeah.
So if we go and say, okay, this is a great psalm for really looking at these actions under the definition of integrity of heart, what I do lifestyle-wise, what I do in actions of righteousness, and what I speak when I'm talking.
Right.
And say, how do I do with the life of integrity?
Yeah.
That's why our question was, do you live out your integrity?
The comments you made when we first started this psalm about the time we've been on it, and that we could still go more time into it.
In fact, I did this. I did a Bible study on integrity, and there's all kinds of verses on integrity. There's a whole psalm about integrity, as a matter of fact. And you could spend 2 or 3 hours, I did, on what integrity means to your life and really thinking about that. And that's when I came up with this thinking about the submarine of the boat has integrity. Okay, so it's the boat's ready for anything if all the systems in the boat are working together. So my life is ready for anything if all the systems in my life, my time in the Word, my lifestyle, are all integral. They all have integrity.
Yeah.
It's a great meditation. We can meditate on those verses on that psalm. It's a little psalm, but very meaningful in our lives, and asking that question, do I live my life of integrity? Do I live it out? How I speak, how I act, and what I believe.
That simple song can be very humbling.
And we need to think about it, and then we need to pray. That's a prayer. So can I come before God and say, I want to live with you, abide with you in your holy hill. And I want to be a person who speaks integrity and acts righteously and does the lifestyle of the truth? It's a great question. I hope it's been a blessing to you guys on YouTube. We've been talking about integrity, and I want to recommend a video to you. It's called Obedience as a Lifestyle. It's out of Colossians chapter 3. I think you'll enjoy it. And if you do, hit the like button and the subscribe button. That helps us with YouTube. And we're going to continue our study in the book of Psalms next week. And until then, God bless you.